A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic, all the way from the Gold Coast here in Australia. As I was just saying to our producer before the show, where I live is a magical part of the world. I live on the Gold Coast in Australia, which is basically a tropical sort of beautiful paradise. And at the moment it's hot, steamy, thunderstormy, and it's typical summer weather here. So I'm not complaining. I love summer. So wherever you are in this world of ours, whether you're freezing cold with the snow or whether you're like me here in Australia melting away under the air conditioning, it's a magical time to be alive. And I think it's time that we've now got to shift our focus onto some positive things in our lives. We've had so much now going on for nearly 2 years of doom and gloom and COVID and restrictions and everything. Let's turn everything around now and make it a positive thing that, you know, this week we're going to have some positivity. We're going to have no more negativity. Yes, we know that it's still going on and we've still got to honour the restrictions and the rules and regulations in our own local area. But I think we can put a positive spin on it and find something to smile about each and every day. And even if that is only having a chat with your neighbour or something long distance and, you know, putting a smile on someone else's dial by sort of saying something positive or saying something nice, not just focusing on the pandemic at hand. I think we've all covered that 1,000 times over, and I don't think there's too much more that's new that can come out of this other than a new variant, and I think we're all tired from that. So I think it's time to put a positive spin on the new year and let's get cracking. The Simply Tarot card of the week this week is one of my favourite cards. It's the Four of Pentacles. Now, it's not just my favourite card because it's money improvements or more money coming your way. In my very early stages of learning tarot and working with the tarot, it was always one of those cards when I saw it come up in a reading, I would say, oh, isn't that nice? You know, it was sort of like it was a positive energy would sweep over me. It was sort of like a card of relief. It was like, finally, we can take a little bit of a breather. And that's how I always looked at the card. Yes, its most important meaning is money improvements, more money coming your way. You can see he's got it sitting on his head. He's holding on to it. He's standing on it or sitting on, you know, his feet are perched on the money. So there is money certainly coming your way. And what a nice start to the new year, because we've all had such a difficult time trying to juggle finances in this last couple of years, never knowing what next week was going to hold, whether we could even go to work and whether we were going to, you know, be lucky enough to earn enough money to put food on the table. So this is a nice turning point, I feel. It's a change coming in the year and I can feel it. It's wonderful. So each week we talk about astrology, and this has become sort of a really integral part of my show each week. And I have lots and lots of messages from people in my inbox, and I really do try and answer as many of them personally as I can, but as you know, time runs out for each and every one of us. So I want to just be very clear. This segment is not about going through the 12 signs. It's about an overview or a snapshot. If you can imagine an old Polaroid camera where we used to take an instantaneous photo, well, that's literally what I'm doing of the universe and the planets, at where they sit just hours before the show. I have a look at in the charts at what is actually going on. And that's where I bring my weekly astrology report from. It's not that I sit down and look at each sign. I look at what's actually happening as the planets transit their way around the zodiac wheel. So this week we've got 2 planets that are in actual retrograde. Now, I know you're going to be scratching your head and saying, what on earth is she talking about now, retrograde? What does that mean? Well, when a planet is said to be going retrograde, it's said to be going backwards or seemingly going backwards in the universe. So it actually works not necessarily in reverse, but it sometimes intensifies the planet that we're talking about and gives it more strength to some of its abilities. In some cases, it weakens things, but a lot of times it's giving us time to slow down and really absorb and understand the energy of the planet while it's in a particular sign and get the maximum we can out of its energy while it's doing its little dance, sitting going retrograde or going backwards or seemingly going backwards in the chart. So the first one I want to talk about is our dear old friend Mercury. Now, Mercury does his little dance in the universe 3 times a year. He goes retrograde, anything from a week and a half to 3.5 weeks. Mercury is currently in retrograde. It started on the 14th of November, January 14. So that was only a few days ago. He will be going retrograde until the end of the month. So you need to be very careful when you're looking at this retrograde planet of Mercury. It's about 15 days that he's going to be going retrograde. So if you're looking at any time now until roughly the end of this month, around about the 29th, but let's just say the end of the month to be really on the safe side, that Mercury then has sort of gone through his stationary period and then actually gone direct. So what does Mercury retrograde mean for us sitting in Aquarius? Well, Mercury is the planet of communication. So we have to be aware any form of communication, whether it be text message, whether it be a phone call on your cell phone, whether it be an email, a personal conversation, anything that's any form of communication at the moment can go haywire. So you have to be very careful that if you've got an important meeting or an important discussion that you need to have, you make sure that the other person really does have their listening ears on and is really listening and absorbing and understanding what you're saying. It is very easy for people to only say, yeah, I'm listening, and only be half listening or quarter listening, and they only pick up on certain words, and then they start to arc up and get cranky and say, oh, that's not the way I see it, and before you know it, we're in a fully fledged war. We've got, people getting angry and shouting and whatever for no apparent reason because they haven't really listened. So during this time, I always suggest to people, if you don't have to sign anything, if you don't have to go into an important meeting, if you don't have to have that important discussion, leave it till after Mercury has gone retrograde. Sometimes it's, we can't organise our lives around that, and sometimes we just have to go with it. In those instances, if it's a written contract, if it's something that you're going to be signing, make sure you read it, reread it, and reread it. In those sort of instances, I tend to read something out aloud. That way, then you tend to sort of pick up if something's wrong, if there's a wrong set of figures or there's wrong wording there, where if you're reading it in your mind, you can tend to go a little bit too fast and just gloss over things. Now, Mercury retrogrades also, Mercury is the planet of the trickster and loves to play, have fun with us and cause chaos in our lives. So this is the time where you need to be much more aware of your devices, because you could drop them, you could leave them behind, or they could just play up. And sometimes you sort of think, why on earth is my cell phone misbehaving like a naughty 2-year-old? And, you might just need to close it down completely and reboot it and restart it. This is the time, if something's going to go haywire with your software, or somebody's going to forget to do something, or don't communicate with you with an important task that needs to be done, it will happen under a Mercury retrograde. So as I said, until the end of the month. So we also have Mercury that is retrograde holding hands or conjunct the planet Saturn sitting in Aquarius. So not only is Mercury up to his tricks, but he's also holding hands with Saturn. Now, Saturn's the planet of the disciplinarian, of, the father figure, the thing that likes everything to be just so, likes you to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and be very precise. And so Mercury's going to have a little bit of fun here, disrupting or trying to derail Saturn's sort of stabilising influence into your life. And Mercury's going to find that really funny. If there's any way that he can rile up Saturn, he will. So be aware, look at that as in Mercury as being sort of like the naughty child that could have some sort of say or do something disruptive or do something silly in a meeting, where you're in a meeting with, some very important people and everything's, sailing along nicely, and then all of a sudden you say something random out of nowhere and you think, when the hell did that come from? That's a Mercury slip up. So be very aware of thinking before you speak, particularly if it's something really important. I'm not saying anything that you're going to be told under this transit is a pack of lies. I don't mean that at all. I'm just asking you to make sure that you're really aware, you're really listening and really paying attention, because a lot of times we're all a little bit preoccupied and we're not paying attention, and we think we heard what we heard and we really didn't hear the story or the information correctly. So that's our Mercury retrograde. Our other retrograde we've got at the moment is Venus. Now, Venus is the planet of love and affection. Venus has been actually going retrograde since halfway through December, and it will also continue its retrograde process till the end of the month. So it's interesting that Mercury and Venus are both retrograde at the same time, even though they're in very different signs. They're still having their own impact on us. Now, what does a Venus retrograde mean? Venus retrograde is a time when we can sort of slow down, smell the roses a little bit, and reorganise or relook at our love life, or the things that are important to us, the things that make us smile. So it's interesting that it's happening at the tail end of last year and the beginning of the new year, where we have this opportunity to sort of a luxury of time, I'm going to call it, to slow down and look at the things that put a smile on our dial. So it's important to not rush into new projects unless they're absolutely necessary. Take your time. Enjoy what you're seeing. Sort of look at things and say to yourself, is there any other areas in my life that maybe need attention? It's the time to really examine everything that's important in your life. It might be the time to sit down and look at your accounts and see if there's any ways that you can slash some of your utility bills, or am I paying too much for insurance and things like that. These are the things that are important to us. It might not necessarily be the things that we love in our lives, but, you know, paying an insurance premium on our house protects the things that we do love inside. You know, that if something was to happen, we would have the financial means to be able to restart again. So, you know, it's important to look at things like that. It's also important to examine the important relationships in our lives. Not necessarily are they all love matters of the heart or love-connected relationships, but the people that are important to us. You know, whether it be your sister, your brother, your in-laws, your mum, your dad, the people that are special in your life, your special friends. There may be somebody there that might need a little bit of extra attention, somebody that you really just haven't had the luxury of time to spend with recently because you've been too busy trying to organise other areas of your life. So just make sure that everybody around you is okay, and that, you know, there might be somebody there that might be struggling a little bit, and just you showing them a little bit of kindness and putting a little bit of effort into the relationship could make all the difference. So there are 2 retrogrades that we needed to talk about today. We've got our usual culprits. We've got Pluto conjunct the Sun in Capricorn. Pluto's been there since 2008 and will be there till 2024. So it's like each week I talk about Pluto, but Pluto is on the last part of his transit. So this is when we're going to start to see and feel more the effects of Pluto. Now, Pluto's role is to completely transform the way that we see things. So anything that's hidden, or anything that people try to hide or try and be clever by, or try and get around a rule or a set of circumstances, it will come out into the open. So if you're doing anything that is not above board, be aware Pluto could be knocking on the door very, very quickly to bring it out into the open, and you will be caught. You've only got to look at the events that have been happening around the world in the last week with, you know, whether it's politics or whether it's tennis stars or whatever, people trying to sort of manipulate the truth and, you know, get their own way on things. And, you know, all of a sudden, more and more information comes tumbling out that, you know, we then see that things weren't quite the way that we were led to believe in the beginning. And, you know, you've only got to look at politics with politicians, no matter where they are around the world, seem to be having their fingers in the till or getting themselves into a little bit of trouble, or attending functions and parties in the middle of lockdowns, or not telling the truth, or not managing something, or not, you know, even just being honest with the people in their own countries and their own nations. So it's an interesting time that you shouldn't be not being upfront and open and honest. If you are doing something deceitful or something underhanded, you will be caught, you will be exposed, and Pluto will take great delight in that. And because it's in Capricorn, it's in the areas of government, big business, anything official, the important areas of our lives. So you can't get away with anything. You can't pull the wool over people's eyes. Somebody will see through it. Somebody will find that little weak area and expose it. And because it's conjunct the Sun, well, the Sun is where our ego and our drive comes from. So, of course, the Sun wants everything to be truthful, wants everything to be full of brightness and happiness and hope. So, you know, the Sun is actually welcoming Pluto's initiative here of bringing these things out into the sunlight so they can be exposed and can be, you know, converted from being something deep and dark and mysterious and maybe not so pleasant into, let's bring it out into the light, let's get a solution and let's move forward. So they're all very important areas. Finally, I'd like to sort of talk about, again, we're still sticking with Mercury, the planet of communication, and Mercury being retrograde in Aquarius. And, you know, with Mercury in Aquarius, of course, there's going to be some light bulb moments. Yes, there's going to be things that are going to come out of nowhere, things that maybe even might shock or surprise somebody. Wow, I wouldn't have thought of that person, or I wouldn't have thought that would have come out of their mouth, or gee, that sort of behaviour I wasn't expecting from them. And maybe it's because we tend to put people up on pedestals that we tend to sort of not really get to know or understand the true person. We only see what we want to see, and we formulate a very quick opinion on that person in that way, and we sort of put them up there and sort of paint them almost in a saintly sort of fashion. So the moment that they're human and they show us some sort of chink in their armour, we get very upset. We get very upset with them. And I think probably more importantly, we're getting upset with ourselves, even though we don't want to admit it, that maybe, just maybe, we gave them a little too much credibility for being this perfect person, being saintly-like, and when they fall from grace, we just don't like it. So Mercury, as I said, is retrograde, sitting in the energy of Aquarius, but it's making an uncomfortable transit or aspect, which is known as a square in astrology terms. Now, what that means is it's at right angles. So it's 3 signs from where Mercury is. When we look at Uranus, the planet of the unusual and the unexpected, is sitting in Taurus. Now, Mercury squaring Taurus at the best, Mercury squaring Uranus in Taurus at the best of times would be an uncomfortable energy, because Mercury is the planet of communication. It's sitting in Aquarius, so it's liking to do things or say things at the moment that have got a shock value, that are going to get your attention and really, you know, give you something to think about. And not always is it in the most positive of ways. Sometimes the shock can be in a way that we find very uncomfortable, that it challenges what we believe in and what we stand for. Now, when it's making a square angle to Uranus in Taurus, it's telling us that things are going to happen very suddenly. Uranus is that planet where it likes to be like the bolt of lightning. It strikes the ground out of nowhere, unexpected, shakes everything up, says to us, well, okay, what'd you think of that? Here, I'll give you another one just for good measure to see whether you really grasped what I was trying to say. So with Uranus sitting in Taurus, it's challenging what we believe in as individuals, as people, the things that are very important to us, our value systems, the way that we structure our money, the way that we structure our own personal lives, the things that are important to us, the value systems that we hold very near and dear, how we look at and evaluate our family and our friends, the things that we will accept or won't accept in our lives. So when you've got Mercury squaring or sort of making an uncomfortable angle there to Uranus in Taurus, we're going to see some unusual or uncomfortable conversations coming out of literally nowhere. Things could be sailing along nicely, and then all of a sudden we've got, you know, a major crisis on our hands that is somehow or another connected to communication. Again, we could look at this on a world stage and say, okay, well, this applies to politics or sports or to the weather or the whatevers, but we can take it back to a very personal situation too, that something could happen out of nowhere that we really do have to deal with, that will rattle our cage, that will rattle us at our core and really ask us to look at what is really important to us, and maybe we need to take a different direction. All I can suggest to you is, if something like this happens to you, take a time to sit down and absorb it, understand it before you make a decision or a choice, and try not to overreact to it. You know, try and absorb it and look at it from every angle before you proceed forward, would be my suggested course of action. We're going to talk with Beth in Boise in Louisiana in the US. Are you there, Beth?
Hey, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Beth. How can I help you, sweetie? Do you have a question I can answer for you?
Sure. Where will my relationship with the woman I'm with be? Shortly.
Right. So you want to know where the relationship's heading? Is that what you're asking?
Uh-huh. Yeah, is it over, or are we gonna mend it, or what?
Okay. All right. The first thing that they're sharing with me, I'm not going to say I think it's definitely over, but what I'm going to say is, from her energy that she's sharing with me at this present second, she's definite. That's it. I'm done. I'm dusted. I'm finished. I'm not going there anymore. And it's like, it's as if she's trying to convince herself that this is over, that this is finished. It's like, you know, sometimes you make a decision, you take a stand and you say, right, that's it. And then you sort of second guess yourself and you say, no, I made that decision, I'm going to stick with it. And we do it anyway, just out of sheer spite for ourselves, I think, because we made that call, that we can't be seen to be being weak by reevaluating it, or maybe go back and revisit it and sort of having to admit that maybe we were part of the problem. I think she's really regretting the fact that the relationship's come to an end, but I don't think she's ready yet to sort of even begin to look at whether or not there's a possibility that we could sort of recapture this, that we could, you know, revisit it and look at it and maybe structure it in a different way. So I think for the moment, Beth, you're going to have to be incredibly patient, and you're going to have to be sort of not so much biding your time, but what can I suggest to you is every time that, you know, parts of the relationship come back into your mind, and they will, because that's how we process things, how we learn and we heal and we find solutions and see where we went wrong or they went wrong, or, you know, it was a joint situation, we both were at fault, is to try and remain as positive as you possibly can. If you do that, you will find then that it will be easier when she does make contact with you, and I don't think it's going to be for a number of weeks yet, that you'll find that most of your frustration is sort of subsided, that you'll be able to sort of look at it and say, yeah, okay, look, I'm prepared to listen to what you've got to say. It doesn't mean that I'm going to say that I'm the one that's completely at fault and you're completely all right, but I will listen to the, you know, the discussion that you want to bring up, the points that you want to make, and talk about where the situation can go. Beth, I sort of feel she was very selfish, and I feel she was very self-centered. Now, that makes it very difficult when you're dealing with some... What's Sweetie?
She was selfish and self-centered?
Yes, that's what I'm picking up. Yes, that she wasn't really considering at times how you felt in the situation. That, you know, there was times there where there should have been more opportunity for you to be able to speak your mind and sort of say, I'm not comfortable with this. And it's sort of like it was, what I'm getting is like you were shut down all the time. So look, I'm not saying the relationship's over. I'm just suggesting to you that I don't think it's the time to reach out to her at this point and try and, you know, put the olive branch out there and try and reconcile something. You need to give this at least 3 or 4 weeks. Anyway, that's where we're going to leave Beth in Louisiana now. We're going to be talking with Lynn in Orlando in Florida. Are you there, Lynn?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a question I can work with, please, Lynn?
I didn't expect that. Yes. I guess to see if you see me moving.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting question, Lynn. The first thing they're showing me is the last 6 months or so, you've been doing a lot of clearing out. Now, whether that's been out of your mind or clearing things out of the property that you're living in, but it's sort of been a real clear out of your life in general. It's like getting yourself ready for some changes that are going to come about in 2022. I do see a move, but I don't see it quite as soon as maybe what you were hoping for. They're sort of showing me the potential of a move from about May onwards. Would that be comfortable for you, or were you hoping to do it sooner?
Well, sooner, but, you know, I know that everything is about timing.
Yeah, they were showing me May was sort of when it was at its strongest, and when I think you would gain the maximum out of the change. It's like if we go too quick, I think we're going to just do it for the sake of creating change instead of allowing everything to be right and go in the right direction. So with this move, I didn't feel it was a local move. I felt it was a long distance. Is that what you're contemplating?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to me, everything's got to be right. You know, we've got to not just say, okay, well, look, I've decided where I'm going to move to. We need to make sure that we get all the facets of the move itself all together, you know, all right. So May is sort of, I'm not sure whether you move in May or May is when you make the decision and everything, you know, you start to put things in process. My first thought was you were actually physically moving in May. So if that's the case, okay, you know, we could be sort of really starting to sort of put this into action in the next few weeks, you know, the preliminary stages of getting ready and, you know, sort of looking at where you might move to and, you know, potential of jobs and things like that, because you can't do all that in a week. So, you know, I just don't think it's going to be in March. It was sort of like, at first they showed me March and they said, no, that was too premature. It was going to be more successful if we aimed more somewhere between the end of March and early May was when I feel that it's going to be its strongest. So, I mean, I know we've got Easter in the middle of that for good measure, but this is a move I think that you've really thoroughly thought out, Lynn. It wasn't something that you just got up this morning and said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. You've given this a lot of thought. You've really looked at every facet of your life and sort of this is the final decision that you've made, that this is the right one.
That is true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what makes it the right decision, because a lot of people during the last couple of years made decisions on the fly. You know, they got out of bed and decided today wasn't a good day, so I'll make a decision and make a change because I'm so sick of life. And it wasn't always the right one, where you've taken it very systematically, very slowly, and you've analysed everything and looked at it. So this will be the right decision. But it's not just a move and a move to another location. This is creating a brand new life in every angle, and that's the important thing. Is it's a real complete life-changing event, and that's the exciting part, I think, Lynn, here more than anything, is that because you've planned it so well, that it will be everything and more than what you wanted it to be. So I wish you well with the move. It's going to be a good thing. It's a very positive thing, and I feel that, you know, you're on the right path. You know, there's going to be some new and exciting, interesting people that you'll meet around the changes that are coming up, and it's going to be somewhere that you're going to call home for a very, very long time. So anyway, that's where we're going to leave Lynn. We've come to the end of the show again. I mean, each week the show seems to go very quickly, but for many of you, there's changes in the air at the moment. Many people are sort of feeling the winds of change, that they feel that they need to get up and do something different with their lives. My suggestion is, look, that's great, but make sure that you really explore everything, that you don't do things just because you're bored or just because you think you deserve to have something better in your life. There's sometimes, you know, we have these feelings 6 months, 12 months before the actual change is necessary. So learn to work with and understand your gut feelings, your psychic reactions, the things, the guidance that you're being given from above. And we all have somebody guiding us from above. So it is a year of change. It is a year of excitement. And it is a year to, I think, be very truthful to yourself and to really look out for the people that are most important in our lives. So, you know, it's a magical time to be alive. And as we close the show each week, I always come up with a song that I sort of say to you that, you know, has been either going through my head or something that I've been drawn to. And today, the song that I'm going to leave you with is one by John Denver, Take Me Home, Country Roads. Until next week, bye for now.